are Two Fat Brokers, and welcome to the Two Fat Broker podcast or videocast or whatever it is you're watching it on. I'm Ben from Abu Dhabi.
Barney from Dubai.
And today we're going to talk about something that's dear to everyone's heart, ours and yours. Why are real estate brokers not trusted? So I've got a little theory here that I want to talk about, and Barney's got his own ideas. So my theory is real estate brokers do a really, really unusual job. All right? Let's say you've got a washing machine salesman. He's got his washing machines. He sells his washing machines. He says they're the best. Everyone kind of, respects his job, even if maybe you don't think his washing machines are the best. What real estate agents do is we're brokers, and brokers broker a deal between two individuals, right? And the reason why we have a job for the most part is you've got a buyer and a seller, and they don't buy and sell property very much. So they need an expert in the middle to link them up with the unit that they want and to manage the process for them and things like that. So we're actually working with two individuals as opposed to a company selling products to an individual. So we broker a deal, and to a certain extent, we don't need to sell our own specific product. Although if we have exclusivity, we want to do that. But we want to make sure that we set up deals in real estate between people. So we're facilitators. We're like a black hand holding a white hand. If you want to picture it in that way. Yeah. So, but what's unusual in that situation is you're trying to tell someone to buy, and everyone gets very funny about real estate agents being like, "Oh, it's a great time to buy." And you see, particularly now with coronavirus going on, someone said, "God give me the confidence of a real estate agent to go on Dubai and say now is a great time to buy." Right? Because that's what real estate agents do all the time. They say now is a great time to buy, and for some people it is, and for some people it isn't.
You have to caveat
that. But also what real estate agents do is when you've got to buy, you need someone to sell. So you need to go to that seller and say, now's a good time to sell. So you're saying to this guy, now's a good time to buy, and you're saying to the seller, now's a good time to sell. So people will see that as, well, hold on, you're just basically telling these people what you want to be true.
I disagree with you. I don't believe at any point maybe I have. I've been selling houses for 21 years, but 99.999% of the time, I speak to a guy because he wants to sell his house, or I speak to a person because they want to buy a house. At no point have I ever gone, you look like you need to buy a house, to anyone. They approach you, you get referred business, you get yourself into a situation where people come to you and say, okay, and look, a lot of real estate agents advertise their stuff online. They're not physically prospecting and persuading anyone to buy or sell. They are simply taking a buyer and a seller and putting them together. So I think.
But I see
your
your
point.
point.
I mean, you're representing either side of the party.
Yeah, but if you're passive and so you're just waiting for the phone to ring and someone calls you because they want to buy or someone calls you because they want to sell, that makes complete sense. What I'm talking about now is, and you see a fair bit of it online at the moment, where real estate agents are going out there and they're saying now's a great time to buy, or now is a great time to sell. Well, you never say now is a great time to sell, right? The inference always is is on the buy side, because when someone wants to sell their house, usually I guess they'll contact a real estate agent and say like, listen, I want to sell for whatever reason, and then it's a real estate agent's job to go and find a buyer. But in a circumstance where you're saying, come rain or shine, which is what real estate agents do, and now's the time to buy, people can get a bit kind of, wary of that and just say, listen, you say it's a good time to buy all the time. And when I was selling my house, you said it's a great time to sell, but now I hear you also saying, can these two things be true?
This is why people don't trust real estate agents?
Yeah. I mean, to a certain extent, if you're selling washing machines,
you're
always going to say it's a great time to buy a washing machine.
But I've never heard a client, maybe subconsciously they're thinking the way you are, but I have never heard a client go, I don't trust you because you're representing both of us. I've heard them, and historically, and I think we get a bad rap, I do, but I think it's a case of one bad apple. But historically, bad news travels twice as fast. Transactions for house purchases take quite a long time, which means the window for something to go wrong in that moment in time is extended. And yes, estate agents or real estate agents take the blame a lot of the time. But then also, coupled with the fact there are some very unscrupulous, unsavoury individuals in our industry. And I've said to you in the car on the way here, I've been selling houses a long time. I think a lot of the mistrust comes from the fact, especially in the UAE, real estate agents are quite young. I'm 38 now, nearly 39. I've been selling
You're
houses
48.
for 20. Thanks.
Are you my older brother?
Younger and more handsome, Mitch. I've been selling houses for 21 years, since I was 17. And as I've got older, the way I carry myself, the way I port myself, the way I'm confident in my delivery, I find more people are prepared to listen to me because I've had time in the market. People are less trusting of such large sums of money to individuals who don't really have much life experience, let alone real estate experience.
But real estate agents are mistrusted the world over. Or you said, okay,
In the US, they are
in the US, they're not. And I think you'll have a lot more trust in real estate agents where they're better educated, better qualified, better regulated, more professional. And I think because the UAE's regulations around real estate are in their infancy, that here we have a specific problem. But I'm not talking necessarily about the UAE.
No.
I think people distrust real estate agents more in the UAE than elsewhere, and there's reasons for that, and I absolutely agree with you. In the UAE, people get into real estate for the wrong reasons and at the wrong points and that kind of stuff. What I'm saying more is, if you're a broker, in fact, if you think about jobs like real estate, it's very, very, very few. And the only one I could really think of was maybe like a stock broker, someone who brokers shares. So you put in your order for shares on, whatever, and they then fulfill that order, with the exchange. But there's not many people out there. There's a little bit more now. You've got the increase of the sharing economy. There's not many people who will take one thing from one individual and sell it to another individual. They don't actually sell it. You just manage it. No, but that's two businesses. What we're talking here about is brokers. But you're talking about two businesses. What we're talking about here is individuals. All right. Now, when businesses are dealing with each other, we're talking about client to client here. There's very few businesses that actually you broker a deal between two people on the street fundamentally.
Yeah.
And I think that's one reason where you're having to deal deal both sides, and also you're exposed to two individuals, which means that there's double chance of you getting a bad review or whatever it might be, or a bad experience, and you're telling each party
a lot of the
slightly
complaints
different
I
things.
hear are that real estate agents aren't worth the money you pay them. That's the bitter pill that people find hard to swallow. So they think the job that the estate agent has done is not worth the money you're paying them, And it is also a job where the financial rewards can be exponential for somebody with no real formal education. But the main thing, and it makes my toes curl when I hear people who've rented apartments and the broker wasn't even there. They've just said, go on in, doors open, and then the tenant or the buyer has to phone them back and go, yeah, I'm interested. I'm going to pay you all this money, but you didn't even have the courtesy to come. So I think that is a major driver in why people dislike real estate agents or brokers. And then the financial remunerations as well,
Well, the reason why that happens again is not because brokers are particularly well paid, but more because we work on a success fee basis. So when you buy a house from a broker, you think, bloody hell, that guy didn't do any work at all. But what you're actually doing is you're paying for all of the failed deals that broker went through, before you, because you only pay on success. Every time you use a broker, you don't pay him, you only pay if you buy, right? So all those brokers were free, and you never, hear anyone say, wow, that broker who I didn't buy through was fantastic value because he worked his bum off for me and I didn't buy through him, so I didn't pay him a penny. You never hear that, but you hear the guy who you viewed one unit with, and you close that. Whoa, I'm paying this guy way too much, and that's unfortunately the way that the business works, and why you're right. It does look like some guys are massively overpaid because as real estate agents we know, you can work for 3 months on someone and get nothing, and then turn up to one viewing and get a deal, and it all comes out in the wash. So it's just the way that the market works, and maybe it would be a better market if you pay brokers by the hour. Maybe that would make more sense, and actually then you'd have different
then you have to know
values of
exactly what
brokers.
they're doing hour by hour. I mean, that's I mean, it's a nice to have.
That's how you pay lawyers and accountants.
Yeah, but they keep book times. You know what? It's
viewing hours.
It would be unsustainable for a broker to go, all right, send Mr. and Mrs. Smith off. I've just spent 4 hours on the phone talking to other real estate agents trying to find what you want. Well, prove it. Here's my phone. Like with lawyers, you just have to take what they say as gospel.
Because they're well trained and highly regulated.
Yes, no, you're right. You're right.
Yes, no, I'm right, or yes, I'm right, or no, I'm wrong.
But the regulation of estate agents here is pretty stringent.
Is it?
Yeah, I mean they have to go on a 7-day training course in Dubai.
Do they?
Yeah.
I did not know
the RERA course. You don't get your exam unless
7 days.
7 days. Oh, 5 days. Sorry, a week. So it's 5 days, and then you have an exam for the last 2 days.
But I think, well, I mean, we're slightly going off topic here, but I think enforcement is, people complain about the enforcement isn't, that aggressive. So got a friend who I work with who worked in Canada, and they have their own special real estate court, and he tells me a really good example where he sold a house to a guy, and the guy said, will it fit my car? My car's this wide. So he called up the seller and said, will it fit the car? The seller measured it, yeah, it'll fit. Turns out it didn't fit. The court made the broker pay 20,000 Canadian dollars to have the garage enlarged to fit the guy's car. Now that is enforcement. The guy complained, and they said, you will not work as a broker until you pay $20,000 to have that enlarged because you've misrepresented the size of that by not being, proactive enough to go and measure it yourself. And you have regulation like that,
well, in the UK, have the Property Misdescriptions Act, which is regulated by the Ombudsman of Estate Agents, and it's the same thing. You get a £50,000 fine, so that's 250,000 dirhams. And jail time if it's serious enough. I've never heard of an estate agent in the UK go to jail, but jail time is on the table if you misrepresent something badly enough. So that's why they don't have in property descriptions a stone's throw from the shops, because who throws a stone how far? So they used to take those, they took those out of the property descriptions.
Really? Yeah. Well, I mean,
and I think also a lot of it is I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that some estate agents do some pretty, unscrupulous things, and I'll put them, not unscrupulous, they try and stretch the truth around their marketing to a degree where, for example, Property Finder, there are other property portals available, have a team specifically dedicated to weed out fake listings. So, and a button where you can report a fake listing. So if you go online and you phone an agent and they go, oh, I'm sorry, that house is sold, it happens to be the cheapest one on the market with the best photos, that is a phishing listing. So that is a listing that's been put online, never was it real. They want a buyer to phone them and go, I've seen your property listed. I'm sorry it's not available, Mr. Smith. However, I do have X, Y, and Z. Why don't we have a coffee and see what you need? So it's a phishing expedition to get buyers. That kind of thing is very irksome, and they're trying to do what they can to fix it. Perhaps they could try harder, but that's one thing that proves that there are certain people who are prepared to tell white lies to get transactions, and that kind of thing perpetuates. Yeah, well, that perpetuates the bad feeling towards real estate agents. So a lot of it is self-inflicted damage.
It is. I mean, those are UAE specific problems. But to go back to my original premise, I think that real estate agents do a really unusual job, yes. A really bizarre, weird job that I think is very unusual in the market. They try and broker a deal between two people on the street. What do you call it? C2C, customer to customer, something like that. So it's not a business doing one end of the transaction where you can have a certain amount of recourse against that business if something goes wrong. You're working with two individuals, and we get just recently we had a seller pull out even though we'd signed the documentation and got the check and sent it over to them, and our client was furious with us. How can the seller pull out? Well, deal's not signed. Yes, it shouldn't have pulled out. It's not right. Everything was agreed, but our client's very angry with us because of, we're dealing with an individual here, not corporations who have rules.
They've got to be angry with someone. That's human nature.
And so
Shoot the messenger.
Yeah, so we're going to get wrapped over the knuckles for something that's got nothing to do with us. So that's just an example of the very unusual business that we do, I think. And that
so in
go
short,
wrong.
we are architects of our own demise, but also we're in an industry whereby it's difficult for us to legislate against individuals' decision making.
Maybe next video we can talk about how to regulate real estate brokers.
Ooh, we've been Two Fat Brokers.
Wrap them over the knuckles. We've been Two Fat Brokers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.